Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It is the show so low. Has no budget, baby. We're back talking, the woman of the hour, the queen of existence. Marylin Monroe, baby, but we'll get into that in a bit here because we have some news to talk about. Interesting week, man. You know, things are just picking up in some senses, not picking up in others. Society's in a weird place. The day I'm recording this is the Queen's funeral. It's also the day Adam Levine got ousted for maybe cheating on his wife and wanting to name his newborn baby after the mistress. What a weird time in society. It just excites me when things are just bad, you know? When things are so apparently pop culture heavy. I want to do a video kind of talk about that later too. What am I doing just rambling on about Adam Levine and the way he's kind of like taken over pop culture for a second? Maroon 5 sucks, by the way, if anybody cares. I don't know. Weird society, man. There's some news we're talking about, a couple of things that come out of TIFF I still want to bring up, and a couple just smart independent stories that are worth mentioning. How are you guys doing, by the way? Is everyone having fun? Is everybody doing good? I feel like it's been a minute since I've actually done and recorded a GeekWave, because last week's was kind of just like a re-upload of the live stream we did, which was scary because like there was a power surge in the area when I was doing my live stream. Almost fucked me up. So let's do it, man. We got, I think, 2 more Geek Waves before we head into the Halloween season. And I'll tell you guys here right now, October is going to become a very Universal Monsters heavy month for this channel. I think a lot of the content I'm going to be releasing will be horror themed, especially around those type of characters. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when things come that way. But we do got some news to talk about, starting with this piece that I think is genuinely terrifying and upsetting. This is coming out of TIFF, and this is about The People's Joker. So The People's Joker is this independently made film that is legally allowed to exist because of parody law about this trans woman's experience finding her voice in a world through the lens of being somebody in Gotham City. Now, there was like a small snippet of a trailer release that you could stream on somewhere. I saw it on Twitter. I don't know if it's still up. But basically, this was just a trans woman's journey into self-discovery through the lens of becoming a Joker-esque person. And it streamed one day at TIFF. There was some people that were praising it for its beauty and the story it's telling, a beautiful trans allegory for a lot of people. And then Warner Bros. Was like, I'm sorry, but you can't do that, actually. Well, legally they could, because parody law allows that to happen, and you're not infringing on any rights that way. But Warner Bros. Was like, the Joker's not a good allegory for this, we're shutting it down. So this is going to be one of those obscure media pieces that hopefully can find its light of day to come out at some point, but it's just sad, and it sucks that this is the culture we're living in, where these things happen, and Warner Brothers is again screwing up their own brand to the point where nothing matters from it anymore. They are so incestuous and destructive that it's free publicity. You know, like a movie like that is free publicity for people to watch your Joker movie again. With like a trans person in Gotham? No thank you, we can't have that existing, and it's so infuriating. Because there's no harm in any of that. Telling that story is important, and doing it through a lens that, you know, maybe more contemporary people would be able to understand it through, like that kind of a story in Gotham City with people, a name that people will recognize, it should exist. But Warner Brothers, being, you know, the old racist people they are, I'm not even hiding it anymore. I think the heads currently at WBD are racist, sexist old men. I think that's just where it's headed, and this feels like we can't have a trans idea associated with the Joker. You know, that character that's notorious for being sexual. Like even in like the cartoon when Harley Quinn was released, Joker is not a sexual being. Joker should always exist as this asexual character. There shouldn't be like a romantic tendency about the Joker, so who cares if this exists? I saw a little bit of that trailer, thought it was compelling. I wanted to bring it up and kind of like bring it to the people's spotlight. So if you manage to find yourself a way of viewing this, if you manage to see the trailer or learn more about this story, this is called The People's Joker. It is a fascinating piece hopefully it can find the light of day in some bigger ways. But that's interesting. I wanted to bring it up so people are aware. Speaking of things that people are aware of, we are, for some reason, this was like the week of like, hey, you like that thing that wasn't financially successful? What if we brought it back? First off, what if we made another Blade Runner sequel? So I'm calling this Lord of the Rings was successful on Amazon. What if we sci-fi'd that? And they're like, Blade Runner 2099, baby. What if we did a sequel to our sequel? You know, it did fine financially, but it wasn't like a money maker. And it's so desperate sounding that there's nothing compelling about doing a Blade Runner sequel. I don't think that universe matters anymore. I like both Blade Runners enough, but I hate the incessant need to have those things feel like they matter, to have that identity be like pushed on you. Like, hey, this is important. Watch these movies. Look how cool and artsy we are. I don't like that. I find it infuriating and annoying. And this sounds dumb. It sounds dumb. I'm sorry. Like, I don't think anybody's genuinely like jumping out of their seats for this news. Ridley Scott will be producing. Who cares? Like, honestly, I don't know who cares. It seems like such a wasted opportunity, and like you could have taken this concept and made it something special. I don't know. Boring. A new Karate Kid movie is slated for 2024, not connected to Cobra Kai, but a retelling of the original film. Who is this for exactly? I feel like anybody interested in a Karate Kid thing at this point in our lives is only interested in the Karate Kid because of Cobra Kai. So what are you really thinking doing this? I don't know. I find it utterly fascinating. Such a bizarre idea that they've thrown out there. So those two things, I'm like, who cares? But this last one upsets me so much on a fundamental level that it's crushing my spirits in ways people don't understand. So I want to get into this a little bit. We're not going to spend too much time on it. I'll definitely go into it more on the live stream. So 15 years after the release of Constantine, the Keanu Reeves and Francis Lawrence movie, the team is coming back to make a sequel. Now, because of this, we are canceling any other project with the Constantine or Madam X title in it, meaning that TV show of a person of color lead playing Constantine is probably not going to be happening anymore. And now instead we're getting the 60-year-old Keanu Reeves coming back, doing his American accent for a UK character. And I hate this more than anything else DC has announced. This is the laziest thing that they have ever greenlit at this company. I'm sorry, it is. Keanu Reeves is not a good actor. I will stand on that hill till I die. I don't care what anybody says. He's a saint and a great dude. He's a shit actor and a terrible Constantine. He can't do this anymore. He can't do that role anymore. And it's such a bad interpretation of the character. But now this is the part that kills me, that this is what the culture is going to think of Constantine, is this Keanu Reeves bullshit some more. Like, no, there's so much good stuff about this character we'll never explore again now. I hate this so much. It's so infuriating. It's like, what's things people like? Well, we could do a sequel to that movie with Keanu Reeves, with that character we own. Yeah, let's do that. Another white guy leading a thing. It's like, you are really killing your vibes, man. I hate this news so much. It is so upsetting that this is where we've come to for this company. And I am somebody who has adamantly defended some of the choices made by DC. They have made better television than Marvel, bar none. I don't care what anybody says. Doom Patrol, Peacemaker, Harley Quinn, Stargirl, those shows are all superior to everything that Marvel's made. I don't care. Any genre of Marvel, they're all better. This is the kind of bullshit that upsets me. This is just like, what if we put John Krasinski in Multiverse of Madness because people are demanding without actually thinking of what it could be? That's what this feels like. That's how it plays. It is so annoying. It is so frustrating. And one of the laziest attempts to show people you care and think about what they want. You're not doing any of that by doing this. You're just not. You are showing you have no original ideas. People can say they like that film, but you're just nostalgic for a good Keanu Reeves performance because the guy's a shit actor. I am going to go down on record saying this will be my most hated film of the year it comes out, probably. And I'm not like the biggest Constantine head. I'm not. I like Hellblazer. I love some of those original books. You look at everything that those are about, and then you're like, oh yeah, I know who could play that. Keanu Reeves. No, honey, he can't. So this will kill me, probably. But we have one piece of news that I got to talk about because it's kind of personal to me, something I love dearly. The trailer for Avenue 5 Season 2 has dropped. October 10th, baby. We're coming back. The Avenue 5 is headed back round, baby. We're back on the road. We're back on the fun times. I have never liked a show more in my life. This is my shit exclusively. Oh, it's so fun. Obsessed with this show. Obsessed with this concept. Cannot wait for the show to come back. Looks as fun as ever. Looks as good as ever. Avenue 5, October 10th. I will probably... I don't know if I will be doing weekly reviews, but we'll be talking about it every week on the live stream. So that's all the news I got for you. When we come back from the break, let's talk about how we hate ourselves and why we love Marylin Monroe. So originally, I thought I was just going to do a video talking about the films of Marylin Monroe, and we'd explore in her character and everything she's kind of done in her filmography, because there's something to explore in that, where you can feel like this character being built and this persona, like creating itself. But the more I sat down, I've been thinking about Marylin Monroe my whole life, and the more I've just been in modern times thinking about her, I needed to talk about like why, as a society, we've made this thing, and by thing I mean this concept of Marylin Monroe. It's almost, no, it is heartbreaking. I was gonna be like, it's almost tragic what we've done to her. It is fucking tragic. It's terrifying that this could happen to an individual, where they can be coerced and corrupted into this machine and turned into this product of just this faceless entity where you're selling a brand literally based on your face. It happens all the time. And that is a topic almost for another day, where we could talk about how anybody in the entertainment business who isn't like a movie star has to sell their brand solely on themselves. That is the sad truth of this concept, where even, okay, so what I do now, it's not on the same scale as like a Marilyn Monroe or Dwayne Johnson, but if I am to get sponsorships, or if I am to find other places to work and sell my product to people, I am the sole provider for doing that thing. So society is kind of built to like, you are selling your product based on your identity. And that's kind of where it shifted from Marilyn, where it's like, we as a society have seen her and just kind of accepted that this is what we need things to be. We have taken her image and morphed it into something we control, which is so fucked up. And it's so twisted, and it destroyed this girl. Like, it ruined her and her life. And that's like this thing that I'm very excited. So at the time of this recording, I have not seen Blonde. I have heard so many fascinating reviews and opinions on that film, where it's trying to tell this story of a tragically broken woman finding her way in the world, painted through this really terrifying and destructive lens. And now the thing about Blonde, and I think a lot of other interpretations of like a Marilyn story, is that they're always done by men. And now I'm not saying men cannot tell a good story about a woman. That is not what I'm saying at all. But when you are talking about like the tragedy and the humility that a girl like this has to face, you cannot tell an honest portrayal of that through a male gaze. It never comes across as naturalistic or competent. It always comes across as either too sexual, too deprived, and just missing the point of what it means to be a woman. And I really think Marilyn is a figure that would have benefited from this more female approach to her story later on. And that's the thing about society too. And again, I don't know how deep we want to get into this idea of just being manipulated by the men in her life and being told how to look, how to behave, what you can do, what you can say. She was always connected to like this male figure, and it affected her in that way, where it's like, this is another thing just kind of like of the time period too, that you are a woman and you're supposed to behave a certain way. You're supposed to be this certain domestic goddess of a wife. And, you even hear people like, I love Audrey Hepburn. My favorite actor of all time is Audrey Hepburn. And you hear stories that she later on in her career was like, I like acting. It's kind of fun, but I'd rather just be a mom. I'd rather just be in a situation where I can have a family and be that person. And sometimes you hear that and you're like, yeah, that's good for her. It's a good thing she had that and she wanted that. Then part of you's like, was she kind of controlled into thinking that? And that is like not the case of Hepburn. She was able to do her own things and find her own identity. But when it comes to Norma Jean Baker, this image was coerced into making her this concept, and it became this terrifying, incestuous disease that destroyed her and ultimately ruined her life. And there's so much about Hollywood, especially old Hollywood, I love to talk about. I love going back and looking like, this is how we made films, this is how we advanced the technology. But you cannot say old Hollywood is better than today's Hollywood because, one, today's Hollywood, we have sensitivity. Or what's the word they're using? Physical coaches, like just what's the fucking word? There's this new title that we have for like these sensitivity or intensity coaches. It's where like if you're doing like a physical act on screen, you have these kind of people that can help you through these intimacy training and helping you get comfortable in the situation and all that stuff. Like that is such a cool advancement that I'm glad we made. Wouldn't it be nice if we had something similar to that in the era when Marilyn was like forced to say all these intense, incredible lines while having to stand a certain way, having to say things in a certain voice, having to present in a certain way? And that's kind of like the thing I really wanted to get into is like, why did we have this obsession with her in particular? Like, what was it about Marilyn that made her special and different than everybody else? There's something there that maybe because I wasn't alive in her active years that I couldn't really like understand it. And I couldn't really like be a part of that conversation and really get to know the woman. But looking back, like I know I'm different than a lot of other people. When I look at an old film, I see the time it's made in, what is being presented in that time period, and how it's being portrayed. And I look back at like Marilyn does not look like she's having fun in any of her films. I love her to death because I see this tragic figure that I want to help. And maybe that's another thing we should kind of explore here is like, is it like this need to like you're lusting for this beautiful goddess on screen? Or are you just feeling like she is playing it so tragic and so disheartening that you want to help her? And maybe some people will see it in certain ways. And that's like the first thing I kind of want to talk about was like, especially from men. I don't know what it is that made her the standard for beauty. Like, why was Marilyn this arousing figure of like seduction when she presented herself as this kind of like childlike energy? It's so weird to me. And that's a whole other thing of just how like men are perverted and they like this like the perfect blonde hourglass who talks a certain way, is obsessed with you, has like that childish little talk in her voice, like that weird shit that just goes on. It's weird to think about it like from today's perspective, and especially like when I am a young man who is watching these films with this beautiful woman that pop culture has told me is the pinnacle of beauty, and you just see this as like, she looks gorgeous. She is a beautiful woman. She is stunning in every way of the word, but she is no more beautiful than a lot of the other actresses we have in this era. And I think it's just like the pale blonde skin, the perfectly cut figure, the bosoms, if you will. I think it's got to be something like that where we were able to corrupt her image enough to morph it into what a man would want her to look like, so we could take that identity and put it over here to make that special. And that is just so fucked up to me, that we could just take this character, take this woman, corrupt her image, and pretty much own it. And it's one of those things, too, you talk about this a lot in pop culture, and this is like a twisted part of the entertainment industry, and anybody who works in like the popular culture sphere is like, you don't really own your likeness as soon as you are putting it out into something. You know, once you are in Harry Potter, you are suddenly no longer Daniel Radcliffe. Suddenly you are Harry Potter. When you are put on a poster, you're suddenly no longer just Boris Karloff. You are Frankenstein's monster. You can't just exist without being that. And when you are a young woman, it's even harder, because the examples I gave were two men who could just walk out and have people know who they are, but still do that. When you are a woman, and I say this as somebody who is a man, so take this as just me trying to explain what I think the circumstances for the women of this time is. Just, you cannot change your persona no matter what you're doing. That's why when you hear like personal stories about people with connections to Marilyn, you see her when she's alone with them, this tragic figure who is vastly different than what you're portrayed on. A man could get away with that easier than a woman. When you are in public, you have to act a certain way, or you are hysterical, or you are seen as something else. And that kind of just upsets you, because now you are just that image. You have to have that little, like, weird way you speak. You have to have that dimple on your cheek. You have to talk a certain way. Your hair has to look a certain way. You stand a certain way. You smile a certain way. You call everybody a certain name. You can never fully escape that identity that was built for you. And when you are Marylin Monroe, the world literally just propped you up to be the icon of beauty. That's the other thing too. Beauty standards are so weird to me, because Norma Jean's a beautiful girl. And again, like I said, I don't understand why she is the outlier here. Like, she is no more pretty than some of the other people in this time period. But it sucks that suddenly that's all you can be. You can't be the clever character. You can't escape that identity from yourself. Even when you have tragedies in your life and you are forced to say certain things and act a certain way and behave a certain way, you can never really feel anything, and you just get lost in your own identity. And that is what happened to Marilyn in spades. There's just so many factors working against this girl that it's tragic. And the thing is, like, she has become this staple of popular culture where people parody her movies, people parody her voice. It becomes a joke who she was. And that's this like thing too, that she is just this exploited figure that we're still exploiting today. And that is the tragic part, that you just look at and you're like, oh, why are we still doing this? Why are we creating this identity for this girl? Where her whole life, since she was found and discovered and like, oh, we can turn this into something beautiful, she becomes the first woman on the cover of a Playboy, exploiting a younger version of herself where she sold her nude figure for photos, and you're just like, she's trying to survive. Then we prop her up to become an actress, and we're like, you have to do all these different takes. We're going to force you to look a certain way. There's that story you hear about like Laurence Olivier directing. Oh, what is that film? They did My Weekend with Marilyn's kind of about it, where it was just like the Prince and the Pauper or something like that. And he's just like telling Marilyn, like, you don't have to do anything. You just have to look pretty. Just shut up and look pretty. And you're like, oh, the fact that she wasn't even allowed to really think like that. And that this was not like just the only occurrence of something like this happening. It was just that instead of like someone like Judy Garland, where we're selling like, look at this young woman who can just sit down, sing the songs, bang, bang, bang goes the trolley, and her life gets ruined because of that. She gets addicted to numerous things, becomes this self-destructive, corrupt person who hates herself. But we did that for so long of Judy, that she's this young woman who just hated who she became, and then she fell out of favor with the world and the popular culture, that she's not really a household name anymore. People know Judy, but she's not like the person. The difference was people wanted to believe you could fuck Marilyn. Like, that was the whole conception of this girl, is like, you can see her and you watch the movies she's in with these standard looking men and you're like, oh yeah, you could hook up with her easy. She is, and I hate to use this term because it's not fair to her, it's not fair to anybody involved in that, but she was considered to be portrayed as a slut, where it's like you could see her, she would want you, she would desire you, and you can feel her fighting against that personality where she wants to be free, she wants to escape, but she can't. The world has just dug their claws into her, and she can no longer fight against that persona. It's tragic in so many ways what has happened to this girl. And I hate that we're still doing it. I hate that in today's climate, we are still obsessed with her standard of beauty, where I show... It's weird. Like the other day, I was watching The 7-Year Itch with my brother-in-law, who is, I would say, has never seen a Marylin Monroe movie in his life. And we're watching it, and he's like, so what was special about her? And that genuinely makes me happy. He wasn't like, oh, she's ugly, she's not this thing, but it's like, what was so special? Like, why was she talking like that? Why was that the thing people sought after? The truth is just, men were perverts. This was a girl with mental issues, with a state of being where you could manipulate, abuse, and groom her to becoming the sex icon while still maintaining the thing. And I already kind of talked about like Judy Garland and Audrey Hepburn, but the thing again, Audrey was the girl next door. She was the loving wife, the supportive mother. With Marilyn, it was just clearly this, look at this single lady living in this apartment above you. She wants to come down because she thought she killed you. And you're having this constant struggle, like, I am loyal to my wife, but man, it's Marylin Monroe. You want to fuck her, right? There's an entire movie based on people wanting to get with Marilyn more than Jane Russell. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, she is just created into this certain way. And it's so bizarre that that's what happened to her. Like, this is how she's coming to fruition. Gentlemen prefer blondes. Gentlemen prefer Marilyn. And that's what it actually is. It's so bizarre and tragic. And just sitting here kind of like talking about this, I don't feel like I'm ever going to fully do justice to what we've done to this girl, if that makes sense. Like I said, Hollywood is this thing that I admire, and I think there's some beautiful filmmaking involved, but you can't look past the parts of it where it's like, Marilyn never really owned who she was. There was always somebody else controlling what she did, how she acted, what she would say, and then she never could escape that. And even today, you see these younger people, not naming names, who are on the social media platforms kind of taking that image and being like, look at this beautiful 50s housewife that's kind of perverse and willing to explore certain ideas with you. That is what is selling. Just that style is back and people love it. And it's just kind of heartbreaking to see that, you know? I really just wish we would stop with the image, because you see those pictures, and I want to know what the licensing is for like the Marilyn identity, like what we really have done with that, because you see like those fan-made pictures that you can sell at retail, like there's Marilyn and there's Presley and there's James Dean, these other people who kind of have their image corroborated into becoming essentially a Halloween mask, if that makes sense, where it's like you can buy that identity in a store and you don't get any of the context to how it's there. Where it's like, oh yeah, you could be Elvis, but you don't remember like what he did to these young girls, or like how he got to be here, or like the music he stole from certain people, and how he was abused and manipulated by his tour or like his manager for a long time. Marilyn is no different. She became the standard of beauty. If you didn't look like Marilyn, you were considered ugly, and you had to be a little bit more nice than her. Everybody would see her, you're like, oh, you're just that dumb bimbo who would sleep around, who would do all these promiscuous things, who maybe wanted to try to be a mother, who wanted to find that side of herself, to find the normality that she never had in her own life, but suddenly she was not allowed to do so. The idea that she could was destroyed numerous times over by people manipulating her and changing her into these different things. And it's really tragic. And again, it really skews from this idea that men are terrible. And it's a hard subject to broach, because I am a man talking about this, and I don't say I'm like mightier than every other man by calling out this bullshit. But especially like, I think more in today's climate, like I would say millennial onwards who study this stuff and look at this stuff, that is a sense of like, no, what we did here probably wasn't the right thing. This was destructive. We turned this woman's identity into a plaything. It ruined her life, and she could never escape that, and she died young because of it. Now, it's how far do we want to go into like the JFK stuff or like the Kennedy stuff? Because I think that is an area you could explore. I genuinely think that's an area you could explore, where it's like she and the Kennedys have this weird relationship. And there's this whole thing that I've been kind of talking about on this channel scarcely in various formats where it's like, with the death of JFK, you kind of lost the idea of the American dream, if that makes sense. And I feel like having that figure that was corrupted to be perceived as the not so bright blonde next to the American dream could have worked. But sadly, these were two figures that were taken from us too soon to see what impact they could have had together. And there's the whole conspiracy. Maybe the Kennedys had Marilyn taken down. Maybe. But why? You know, JFK, like, he's not a shit guy. I wouldn't say he's great, but he's not a shit guy. Like, that is just this whole other area that kind of becomes like even the president couldn't escape Marilyn's, you know, like the obsession with her. And it's like, maybe that could have been an interesting area to explore. There's that comic book DC, The New Frontier, that kind of plays with like an idea of like a future JFK and Norma Jean getting together. And that's kind of like a cool concept to play with, like these two figures taken from us too early, allowing to help each other grow in ways that you couldn't expect. It's a fun concept, but I think there's just so much working against this. Like the fact that from the get-go, the moment this woman stepped on the scene, she became a pop culture icon, to today, where you can see people reenacting the 7-Year Itch skits. You can see people seeing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. You can see the iconic looks for her that people emulated on social media platforms for like these clicks and these views, taking her image into their own hands and corrupting it. Because men have told you that is the standard for beauty. That is what a woman is supposed to look like. The beautiful, blonde, curvaceous woman with bigger breasts, a dumber personality, and willing to sleep with you. That is an image made by men from a real person, and it is very disturbing and messed up that is what has happened here. But that is the case. That has become the beauty standard. That is how we are behaving. That is just, sadly, the tale of Marylin Monroe, a woman with everything going against her, taken into this world that eats you up and spits you out, and she became a cog in the machine that was so important. We are still talking about it today. Men are still obsessed with getting that story right, thinking they understand the tragedy, thinking they can talk about, look, I get it, look at what we did, we broke this girl. Yes, we did, but nobody gets it more than she did. Nobody can write that story authentically or realistically like a female director or writer could. The fact is, men should not be talking about Marilyn Monroe anymore. We should let her be an icon of the past. You don't hear people talking about James Dean this way, you know, and James Dean is somebody I would put on the same level as her. But you don't hear people talking about the James Dean side of things like this. He's an icon like that too. But it's because she's the blonde woman. She was susceptible to the gaze of everybody around her, that they could control her, turn her into things. And eventually she had enough and said, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to act. I don't want to be here. And her story only ends in tragedy. That is the sad tale of Marilyn Monroe. That is the sad tale of Norma Jean Baker. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind. But it sucks. And again, I'm fine with anybody looking at her films and like, I like them. Some Like It Hot is funny, and she is good in it. Like, there are moments in her filmography where you're seeing a true talent brought to life. But then there are moments later on in her career, closer towards her end, where you can see this is becoming too much. This is no longer fun or something she can pretend to do, where the tragedy seeps in and you see that Hollywood really breaks this people down, man. Like, it's an industry full of people who are both the outsider, the individuals coming together to tell these things and be creative and fun and flirty and just care about each other, but also like big old men telling you, you're not slutty enough for this, you can go over here and do that, but you have to show this on here. We're trying to sell like the wholesome girl thing, but also the wholesome girl thing that's going to do certain things to you when your wife's not around. That is Hollywood, and it is so disturbing and broken, and to this day we still have things like that happening. I think you can look at, there's examples in every generation, Judy Garland being one of the earliest ones, then you have the Marilyn Monroe thing happening, then you kind of just have like, maybe we're doing certain things in the 80s and 70s where we're moving away from that thing, but then it kind of comes back full circle once the Weinstein stuff gets exposed, and we're always just showing you what women are supposed to be without actually telling you a woman's story. And that's the sad truth of Hollywood. That we created... It's kind of like that line in the Elvis movie where, Tom Parker's like, it was you killed Elvis because of you and your love for him. He did the drugs and he killed himself because he wanted to perform for you. It's sadly like that with Norma Jean, where it's because of us, the people who have turned her into this icon, who've turned her into the standard of beauty, who have said you have to star in every movie or else what's the point in seeing it? It's because of you that we took your life and corrupted your image, and now we own it. You don't own yourself anymore. You become just a piece of pop culture that we can control, put onto products, turn into Halloween costumes, and forget about forever, but never truly forget. That is the Norma Jean story. This broken, tragic, heartless corporation that sucks and destroys. So, the obsession. What is it? What is it really? Is it because we want to look as beautiful as her? Is it because we want to be with her? Is it because there's nobody in pop culture who did all of those things at once that made it work? Is it because she died young and we're obsessed with this idea of like the tragic figure gone before their time? Like everybody in the 27 Club, like James Dean, like these young actors and singers and creatives who just are taken from us too early. We just become obsessed with that story. Like we just had Tick Tick Boom. And that's like this guy who, it was more just like an accident what happened to him, but it's like, we love this idea like what could have been. And I guess that's part of it with Marilyn, where it's like, what could have been if we let this girl live the life without us watching her with this, big brother eye overhead. It's fascinating. A fascinating idea that we'll probably never get to explore again because we shouldn't. I love Marilyn. I love everything she's done. We should let it go. We should let her go. We should move on. Start telling new stories. Keep her an icon, but don't profit from it. We don't need to profit from this character. We're already all obsessed with her. We get it. We can tell new stories. I don't know what else I really have to say about this subject other than she deserved better by everybody, and so did a lot of other people in this industry. If you know everything wrong with her, imagine the stuff we haven't heard about from less successful talents. That's all I want to say. It's sad that we created this identity for her, and we've become obsessed with this being. But let's end things with a couple of recommendations for you guys, because we're going to be doing the big Marilyn Monroe film episode next week. I don't think we'll be recommending any Marilyn Monroe films here. I would say check out My Weekend with Marilyn if you want to see a closer than not honest portrayal of the character. Avenue 5 is a movie and a series that I love, so check that out. If you manage to find out a way to see The People's Joker, please let me know. I want more people to see that story and understand what that could have been and what they took away from us. But that is going to do it for this rendition of the GeekWave. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Good luck.